It's no joke when you live in your home and it looks like a doctor's office. So bland and tasteless, almost depressing. After all, what makes a house a home? Whether you own it or you rent the space, ultimately pay the price for it. But does it return the favor of having you there? Now, many of us will go out and fill the space with furniture and electronics, but not with warmth and pleasure. Whether you're suffering or struggling with your mood, depression, lack of motivation or direction with life, no meaning, no purpose, let's face it, the place you live in is the reason. The cold emergency room vibes instead of the warm embrace of having your own space. What you need is art, tastefulness, and pleasure on your walls. Now, many will go out and stupidly add motivational quotes or random car posters on their wall. Why I say stupidly? Because even you don't pay attention to it. Let's face it, you don't give a second of your time or a glance throughout the day and admire them. You need something of sophistication, something that engages you and is of pleasure to you. Because unless you are fascinated by it, it's not going to have any effect. Moreover, you might just be going with the motions of how things work, or maybe sometimes to impress others. So here are some 6 pieces that I have for myself and for my walls that keep me engaged and give me pleasure. The first piece I'm going to talk about is particularly this one, which you can see, which has a quote on it, which says the silent man is the best to listen to. But that's not why I got it. Recently, I started indulging myself in the admiration of fine spirits and well-aged cigars. And because of that, my fascination, my let's say interest, I indulged into that craft and that art of savoring a good cigar or a fine spirit. And that's why this actually made a lot of sense, because I can stop by and admire it all the time. The second piece I'm going to talk about again is related to cigar. Cohiba is another brand of cigar, but also I obviously admire the fine lady on the poster, and just is a beautiful blend for me to have it on my wall. The third piece I'm going to talk about is actually, and rather the third and fourth piece are actually coming from my interest in architecture, from my past friendships with architects. Because of my friendship with architects, I developed some interest and desire to explore more about it, particularly more about arts and architecture, and more diving deeper into castles and palaces. Now, this particular piece you see is Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, Germany. The story behind it goes something like, it was constructed about 300 years ago, not more than that. And the king who was responsible for it actually was dethroned and disappeared in the woods. So quite an interesting story. The next castle is the Els Castle. First of all, it's a beautiful, let's say, painting by itself, but the Els Castle itself has a very interesting story to it. Again, it's in Germany, and the story goes that it is owned by the same family for 1,000 years. Can you imagine having a family lineage that you can trace back 1,000 years and having the palace or the castle in your family for that 1,000 years? It's truly remarkable, something I always just blows my mind just to think about it. It's a fine piece to add. Another piece that I have on my walls is this, Vlad the Impaler. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but you might have heard of Count Dracula or Vlad the Impaler. Now, Vlad the Impaler, that as the name goes, used to impale his enemies. Okay, so he was kind of perceived as cruel, let's say. He was the voivode of Wallachia. It's a region around Romania and Transylvania. And although he was perceived as cruel, and interestingly around the world, Count Dracula does come from it. He used to impale his enemies, but in the local regions, if I'm not wrong, he's kind of perceived as someone who was, let's say, very good at keeping law and order and was a very good ruler, let's say. Okay, so, but I could be wrong, but something that I've heard with the how he's perceived in the local region. The next piece, or let's say the final piece I would talk about is the pale blue dot. Yes. Now, this particular picture was actually Earth's first selfie, you can call it, because when Voyager 1, if I'm not wrong, was passing through Saturn, was asked to actually rotate its lenses and take a picture of Earth while it was passing through Saturn. That's the pale blue dot, that's our Earth, and there's a Carl Sagan quote beneath it. So again, a very interesting fine piece, and just reminds me how much speck of a dust we are in this vast universe, right? But again, all these pieces add that sophistication, warmth, and pleasure in my life and keep me engaged. At least once a day, I stop by and take a glance at them or admire them and really think about what I have. More importantly, I would say that I stop by and cherish the final things in life. So if you have something that you cherish as well, please share. I'd be delighted to know more about it.